This is the Financial Beat, helping you hit all the right notes in your financial plan. So sit back as we strike up the band. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler starts now.
Welcome to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to talk about getting you to and through retirement as always. Logan has some good food for thought and some good advice. We're going to get to all that in just a second, but let me tell you how you can get in touch with Logan Sadler at Regari Financial. The number to call is 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. You can get a discovery meeting going, a conversation about your financial situation that won't cost you anything and won't obligate you to do anything at all beyond that conversation. Again, 888-823-PLAN. No cost, no obligation conversation. Logan, how's it going, my man?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Ron?
Oh, not bad. It's been kind of a busy week, but as always, I've been looking forward to this show and getting together so that you can help some folks out there.
Awesome. That's the whole goal here of the show is to have a few laughs and obviously talk about some retirement education along the way.
Well, let's just roll right into it here today. And I was wondering what we might be able to learn about financial planning from Halloween candies. And Halloween's coming up here around the corner. Kids might be finding a lot of good candy in their trick-or-treat buckets this year, or baskets, or whatever they're carrying. First of all, one of the most popular candies out there, Skittles.
Yeah.
It seems like Skittles are a great example of flavor diversification.
Yep.
They're in all different colors, even though I think they all taste the same. But, what can we learn from Skittles, and how does that fit into financial planning?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's funny you brought that up because Skittles are probably one of my favorite candies.
Yeah.
And the funny part about it is like you said, I was kind of shocked and a little bit heartbroken when I found out that they're all basically the same flavor, right? I thought this whole time, I only like the red one or the green one, right? But it's basically the same as the yellow or the red, right? So that was a little bit shocking. But, basically there's a lot of different factors that you think of, and you have all this diversification of flavors, but really you have a lot of the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. And with investments, I would say you could also get tricked into thinking that you're probably more diversified than you actually are, right? I mean, a lot of people, and what might cause that to happen typically is clients come in, they go to an advisor, and they tell them, I'm a moderate risk level, right? Or I'm conservative, or whatever measurement they're using. Well, they put them in stocks and bonds, right? That's a traditional 60-40 blend, and a lot of people think, well, I'm very diversified, right?
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that, Ron, as we've talked about a couple different times, there's been a few different times in history where both of those asset classes have went down dramatically, right? And so it's like, well, wait a minute, where's my diversification, right? If one goes down, one's supposed to either be up or not lose as much, right? And you look back on years like 2022, where the stock market was having extreme troubles. Sometimes it was down over 20% at points, and the bond market was down 10 or 15% at points. So It gets to a spot where you weren't as diversified as you might have thought, right? All your Skittles basically tasted the same in that instance, right? And so one of the things I think of, Ron, and we talk about all the time on the show, me and you, is, you got to look at things when you have just stocks and bonds, which for some people it's probably enough while you're working and you're younger. But as you get into retirement, you're typically wanting to either lower your risk or looking for more higher yielding investments for income. So you want to look at things like structured notes, right? Structured notes are a great way to produce some income. They're also a great way to protect against the markets in some cases. Fixed index annuities are a great way to provide lifetime income, cash flow. You have REITs, which are good real estate investments that can provide some cash flow. And all of those things, in most cases, act very different than what stocks or bonds are doing, right? So that way you're actually having different flavor of Skittles, and you're not just having all your red Skittles in one basket.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was like you. I was really surprised to find out that all the Skittles taste the same, no matter what color they are. So,
it's heartbreaking, right? I mean, it was like finding out Barry Bonds was on steroids, right? It was like, man.
I guess it's
like, dang it.
It's a psychological thing. You see the different colors and you think they're different, but they're all the same. Hey, let's move on to another kind of candy here. Almond Joy and Mounds. One thing I've noticed about those two brands of candy bar, they're basically the same thing, They're exactly the same with one small exception. One has an almond on top and one doesn't. That old slang.
That's very diversified, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you feel like a nut and sometimes you don't. I think that's their advertising slogan. But can you tie that to the financial world somehow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that try to use these shiny, fancy tools of, tax-free retirement, put all your money in one investment type of thing that's going to give you this, that this one tool does everything you've ever needed, right? Like index universal life insurance or even annuities in some case, right? Some people say put all your money in this one investment. And in some cases, it's the market. You have some people out there that advertise they're the best money manager that anybody's ever seen, right? And everybody's good until they're not, right? And so I think it's important to understand that you need to understand what you're getting yourself into and what your overall goal is for your financial plan. Because I think in financial planning, the investment world can get so sometimes diluted by just so many different things that are thrown in there. And a lot of it's just been polished and resurfaced and remarketed or rebranded to say similar things or different things to mean something, right? And I think it's very important when you're looking at your financial plan, whether you're using stocks, whether you're using bonds, whether you're using index universal life or annuities or whatever it is, to understand really why is that in there, what's your goal, what are your concerns, and what is your actual retirement plan going to look like by using those things? Does it help your plan at all from an emotional standpoint? Does it help your plan at all from a tactical standpoint? And making sure that you're actually understanding what's in there and not just, getting rid of the nuts, so to speak, like you said, Ron.
Yeah. Okay, another type of candy, and this is one that we hear a lot about at this time of the year for Halloween. I get sick and tired of everything being pumpkin spice flavored, but one that's just about as bad is candy corn. There's a famous comedian by the name of Louis Black who has a whole bit about candy corn where he explains that all candy corn that's ever been manufactured was made back in 1911. Nobody likes it, he says, and they just keep recycling it every Halloween.
That's funny.
I don't dislike it that much, I don't think, but can you make any sense out of that?
Yeah, I think, in the equivalent in the financial world, some things that, seem to be everywhere, but it's just not normally a good idea or no one seems to like it after they've tried it, is you mentioned it earlier, Ron, is probably variable annuities, right? I've seen a lot of clients where they got into these older variable annuities, and I can't tell you the disbelief on some of these clients' faces when I actually have to show them what's in this variable annuity, right? And I'm not saying they're all bad because, as you guys know, I think there's definitely tools that might fit certain situations, but a lot of the time, clients will come in and they don't understand the fees they're paying, they don't understand the commission they paid, they don't understand the risk that they're involved in, they don't understand why their returns might be lower than the markets, and they don't understand, the variable returns and how those work, maybe, positively, but also how they might work negatively to affect the outcome of that annuity. And so I think the biggest thing is understanding that, there's a lot of pros and cons out there, but making sure you understand what you're investing in and really what the goal of that is, and making sure the pros outweigh the cons. Because a lot of the times in these variable annuities, I've seen clients where this one client I was looking at about, maybe it was about a year ago, and he had about $300,000 that he had put in a variable annuity a while back, and it had grown to about $300,000. And he said, well, it was pretty good. I only put X amount in, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I did some research on it. We have all these programs and fun techie stuff. Like I said, I can get rather nerdy. And I'm able to run some good backdated data on that. And it pulls me all the fees, all the cost, everything. He was in a 60-40 bond split, right? So at this time, again, past performance is not indicative of future performance, my disclosure there. But at this point, the market at a 60-40 split had done around 6%, right? Mm-hmm. And it was funny. So analyzing back the data, his annuity only did about 2.5% returns. And he goes, how could that be? And I go, well, you see this next page right here? That 3 or 3.5% that you're missing is fees. And he goes, I'm paying 3% or 3+% in fees on this. And I go, yeah, because if you look right here, you have a death benefit fee, an income fee, a sub-account fee, this fee, right? And he goes, well, I don't even need a death benefit. I don't even need income off this, right? And so I thought I just bought a market investment, right? So it's one of those things where you really got to understand what you're investing in, what the goal is, and making sure you fully understand what type of Halloween candy you got in your investments there, and making sure it's what's right for you.
And the sad thing and the understandable thing is that most people don't read the fine print. And I know that you're really accustomed to doing that because it's part of your job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fine print's important, right? I mean, I think in anything you sign, mortgage applications, life insurance, investments. Also, even when you're signing up for a gift card there at Amazon or wherever, right? You always want to make sure you're reading things, and that's obviously my job as the financial advisor, is to make sure you're disclosing everything, being very honest with people, and showing them the pros and cons of these investments and the overall outcome of the financial plan.
Logan, I'm going to give the phone number in just a second where folks can get in touch with you. Why is it so important for people during this kind of uncertain time that we're living through? Why is it so important for them to get in touch with you now?
Yeah, that's a great point, Ron. There's so much going on out there in the world, and not just today, but there kind of always seems to be something going on. And I think a lot of people out there the statistics are out, right? A lot of people don't have a financial plan. A lot of people have, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, and they really don't know what they're going to do with it. When they retire, they go, well, I guess I'll just spend some of my 401k, right? Well, how much are you going to take? Well, I don't know. I'll just take what I need, right? And so a lot of people don't have that bulletproof or that comprehensive financial plan that looks at all of the components of retirement planning, right? They don't have a solid income plan. They don't understand their investment planning and how that might change moving into retirement, but also moving through retirement. They don't understand taxes. They don't understand how their taxes are going to play a role, not only now, but throughout the future of their retirement, and also transitioning to their legacy and making sure that their legacy and estate plan is actually set up and orchestrated properly. There's so many of these components out there that a lot of people really just don't understand or have. And again, not that they're not smart or sophisticated, but there's just so many complexities to creating an efficient retirement plan. And a lot of people are really taking the urge right now to get one of those because, there's a lot of storms out there coming, right? Or might already be here. And so a lot of people want to be ready before the storm comes. And if you're one of those people, give us a call, come in for our discovery meeting. You'll sit down with myself, and we'll either do that via Zoom or in person, and we'll go over how we could help bring a financial peace of mind to your retirement plan.
If you want to have a conversation with Logan Sadler, 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-7526. But the easy way to remember that is by using the word plan, because we all need one. If you don't have one, well, that's all the more reason for getting in touch with Logan Sadler. Perhaps you already do have a financial plan. It's written down and all those things, but maybe it might need a little tweaking. Logan can help you do that. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. And if you'd like to have access to all that information and all that goodwill, nice guy you're going to talk to, Logan Sadler, 888-823-PLAN. Logan Sadler at Regary Financial. We'll have more coming up in just a moment.
You're listening to The Financial Beat, the show that makes sure your financial plan has the perfect pitch.
We're back now with more of The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, star of this show. He's the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. Wherever you are in Southern California, thank you so much for being with us today. Regary Financial has two convenient offices, one in Hemet, one in Redlands. If you'd like to find out more about Logan and about the business, go to financialbeatradio.com. That is financialbeatradio.com. We're glad you decided to join us on today's show. That number to call if you'd like to have a discovery meeting, either via Zoom or perhaps in person in one of the convenient offices, 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Now, you can leave your name and your phone number. You'll get a call back from the good folks at Regary, and you can arrange a time to have your conversation with Logan. And guess what? It's not going to cost you a penny, not going to carry with it any kind of obligation. Once again, the number to call is 888-823-PLAN. Got a history lesson here today. It's hard to believe. 94 years ago, October 28th, 1929, was Black Monday on Wall Street, essentially kicking off the Great Depression. And, we've had a lot of discussions about that in the past, but boy, what a monumental event.
Yeah, and you know what, Ron? Even the way you said that got me scared, right? And even though it was that long ago, you had a good intro there.
Yeah.
It is one of those things where I always say, whenever you're talking about the market and you hear Black Monday, Black Friday, anytime you hear that, it's probably a very bad event, right?
Yeah.
And Black Monday was no different, where, like you said, it essentially kicked off the skid there that basically not caused the Great Depression, but started it, right? And, we've been through a lot of these different market events, and it's amazing to see the resilience of the market. That's the one thing I always like to remind people when you look as scary as times can get, it is amazing the resilience that we've been able to endure over the last 100 plus years, where you look at how things can go from so bad to all of a sudden you look from there to now where things are, or even from there to 15 years, 10 years after that. It's amazing what the bounce backs can look like. But man, I tell you what, when it goes down and there's those uncertain times, it definitely is a scary time for many people.
You mentioned one of my favorite words. You were talking about being resilient. And as the father of two small children, I know you know all about how children are resilient. Thank goodness. Well, let's talk about something else involving kids and retirement planning. And in most of these conversations, we're going to talk about older kids that are older than yours, and in some cases, adult kids. If you have kids, more often than not, they usually come up in the discussion when you're talking about your retirement plans. So let's talk about some of the ways that the children of your clients sometimes end up being part of the discussion. First of all, I know that you have a lot of conversations in your office with folks who are concerned about college expenses. For heaven's sake, it is really expensive these days to go to college. And what are some of those talks like?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's sometimes it's very, I wouldn't say surprising, but it's sometimes shocking to some people how many people had kids in maybe their late 40s, right, or maybe even their early 40s, and there's a chance that they'll probably still be in college as you're approaching retirement, or possibly even after you've already retired, right? I mean, the math adds up pretty quick there, and it's important to have a plan to address that, right? Because I think one of the biggest things, Ron, is it's not normally the best thing. Where I actually was just dealing with a client who just came on board, and great family, and they had kids, like you were saying, a little bit later on in life. And one thing they didn't plan for really was college, right? They had been kind of saving for retirement and had done well, but everybody wishes we'd have done better, right? Is always our knock on ourselves. But basically, they'd done well. And the biggest thing they forgot to do was they've always wanted to pay for their kids' school. So now they're 60 and 58. And all of a sudden, they're ready to fork out between $100,000 to $200,000 over the next 2 to 3 years, and they also want to retire, right? And it's one of those things where that makes it very, very difficult on the retirement income phase, because it's not normally the best time to shell out that type of money when you're no longer getting your overtime or commission bonuses or anything extra as far as income goes. And now it's all of a sudden this go time to fork out this outrageous bill, like you were saying, Ron, with how expensive college could be. So I tell a lot of clients, you really want to start planning. If that's something you want to do, you really want to start planning as early on as you can to start helping kids. And there's been times where I've had to tell clients, it's really drastically going to change your retirement outcome if we do this, right? And it's not that it's a bad thing if we do it or don't do it. My job is just simply to show you the facts and show you the financial situation, and see how, if we did do this, you might have to work longer, right? And might have to be significantly longer to be able to recoup and be able to retire and enjoy that life that you guys have envisioned of retirement, to make sure we can cover the college expenses.
Mm-hmm. If you have older kids, they may be adults now, but gosh, so many people are struggling finding jobs these days, finding the kind of jobs that they want to do. And, the job market, the whole climate has changed so much since COVID came along. What do you talk about with these folks?
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of retirees and pre-retirees that are finding their kids that are struggling to find jobs or finish school, or maybe that means they even end up living at home, right? Well into their 20s. I mean, I've seen people in their 30s and late 30s that are still living at home, and they're probably still depending on mom and dad for some expenses and things like that, right? Like cell phone bills, maybe health insurance costs and things like that, car insurance. And it's funny, like you said, Ron, that the demographic and the job market and things like that have drastically changed, where you see people making, way more money than their parents ever did, right? Yeah. I have one client where, the parents were lucky if they scraped together $100,000 throughout their working career, right? Together, both working. Mm-hmm. And now their kids, are getting jobs where they're signing on right out of college for $100,000, $150,000 plus, right? Yeah. And they just couldn't fathom making that amount of money. But then on the other aspect, there's some kids where they maybe got a degree in something that didn't really pan out or pay as much as they might have thought, or it was a industry that was maybe struggling after COVID and things like that. So there's a lot of that going on right now, and I definitely think that's actually one of my questions throughout our discovery meetings process is, do we expect to have to cover some of our child's expenses and things like that? Mm-hmm. If so, how does that factor into the budget? Because that's something where that cost could be kind of make it or break it, right, when it comes to retirement, and making sure that we're able to cover those costs if that's something we're going to do. If not, we might have to figure out some other ways of maybe, getting them out on their own or trying to find some other ways to get them into different jobs. But that's definitely a huge topic of conversation, is older children still living at home.
Yeah, and a lot of people that you talk to, I'm sure, are in what we call the sandwich generation, where they're having to help their children and also having to help their aging parents, which complicates even more.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It's funny when you said that. Again, I have one client that I'm sure there's more of them, but one popped right in my head where the wife, her dad was living there for about 5 years. They took care of him, and he just passed. And then the other one, and then their kid, their daughter, was actually just living at home until this year. Yeah. So it's crazy where, like you said, they were taking care of two people on total opposite spectrums.
Yeah. And let's talk about grandkids. For a lot of folks, spending time with your grandchildren is the most important part of your retirement, and you want to do it as much as you possibly can, even if it involves a whole lot of travel. And I know you talk to a lot of folks about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people when they come in, you could just tell right on their face that's their retirement plan is the grandkids. They just want to go wherever they're at. I have one client of ours who's actually a good old family friend of ours, and he's like Mr. I always call him, you heard the term like Mr. Dad or whatever, super dad. He's super granddad, right? He coaches every sport. He's like involved like you never would believe as far as that goes in his grandkids' sporting events, things like that. That's what he lives for. He lives for coaching the grandkids in baseball and soccer and grandma's team mom, right? I mean, they're all involved, and that's their whole retirement plan. Mm-hmm. Some of our other clients where they travel, their travel plans are around where their grandkids are, right? They don't go to Hawaii because their grandkids are in Florida, right? So they go to Florida, right? So it's one of those things where you definitely got to kind of look at how those will play a role and how that also maybe might end up having to provide maybe some childcare. I have some grandparents who retire and they end up maybe taking care of the grandkids. That might, be covered by the parents' expenses, or maybe the grandkids got to cover them. Then there's also college funding or providing health care. I have a lot of those where in the financial plan, it's like, hey, can I afford to help my daughter out with childcare? Man, it's so expensive. And if we could afford, an extra $500 a month or whatever to help her out, that would make a huge difference. So a lot of that little planning goes into when you're looking at the grandkids, because for a lot of you, it's one of the more exciting times of your life is the grandkid phase, and you want to be able to help them out as much as you can, in most cases.
I've got a good friend who has grandchildren, and they're all grandsons. And during the summer, he has what he calls Camp Granddaddy.
That's funny.
He has his grandchildren come and stay with him for a while, and he takes them fishing and, Camp Granddaddy.
Sounds great.
It's kind of a clever name for it, I think. You're listening to The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Rigeri Financial. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call if you'd like to have a conversation with Logan. There are some folks who have children or perhaps grandchildren with special needs, and in some of those cases, that's going to go on forever. And I know you have lots of discussions with folks about this particular situation.
Yeah, that could be a much more delicate situation, and it typically involves a lot more planning, right? Because the biggest fear is for the parent or the grandparent, if something happens, who's taking care of that special needs child or grandchild, and how his finances is going to look. What are we going to do to make sure if we're qualifying for benefits, is everything in the child's name? Do we need a special needs trust or a traditional trust, or which is the direction to go to make sure that kid is covered, right? And I think there's a lot of different planning that definitely needs to go into making sure we kind of have a really clear path of how we want it to go. What I always like is the plan changes. That's why I tell people all the time, once you draw up a financial plan, it could change the next day, right? But I think just having those documents set up and understanding where things could go if something happened today or tomorrow is super important, especially when you look at special needs planning, because there's a lot of more intricate parts that go into it to making sure it's done correctly.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to mention here on this topic of kids and retirement planning. Logan, generational wealth is a very important consideration, and I know that sometimes that comes into the discussion when you're talking about legacy. Legacy is more important to some folks than it is to others, but what about generational wealth?
Yeah, it's a big topic, I think, nowadays for a lot of families is you're hearing this term generational wealth, and I think a lot more of it is because there's shows like this and many other shows out there, YouTube, lots of different educational information that's out there now, and kind of I don't want to say forced on you, but it's pushed out there more than it used to be.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing a lot more families be a little bit more involved maybe with their kids to teach them not the correct way, but to teach them the best they can of how to sustain wealth or how to get wealth or how to even just get financially well, right? I think wealth is kind of a tricky word, but I like to use financial well-being, right? And so I think there's a lot of clients that we work with where their kids are very involved, which I think is great. They're in their 70s, the kids are maybe in their 50s, and they want their kids very involved in their decisions to understand, hey, if something happens to me, here's how things are set up. Here's what mom and dad did. Here's the things we wish we would have done better. Here's the things we did great, right? And I think going over that and getting them involved with their advisor, we always welcome the opportunity to work with our clients' kids and not just to add on clients. That's not what we do it for. It's really just to make sure that if everybody's involved in the financial plan and you have people as we age, it typically becomes more of a smooth process because the kids aren't stressed out, right? If something happens to mom or dad, they're not trying to call 5 different financial advisors to interview, hey, I need help with mom and dad's finances. By the way, you don't even know mom and dad, right? It's nicer when it's already maybe the advisor that they're working with and you already have that relationship with the kids to making sure that you're helping that generational wealth transfer, but also looking at things more tax efficiently and looking at things from an overall legacy standpoint of how we want that to go. And I think that really is where we always talk about, Ron, why would you come in and meet with us or what makes us different than other advisors? And I think really the big point for us has always been we're an independent firm that really focuses on the financial planning. We have access to pretty much any investment, any solution out there, and they all could be great, right? They all have some cool and exciting things about them, but really it's focusing on, well, how does this benefit the overall financial plan? How does this make our income better? How does this make our investment planning better? How are we minimizing our tax situation or maybe enhancing our tax situation throughout our retirement? And how are we implementing that legacy plan and making sure that things are set up to transition as smooth as possible to that next generation and also making that next generation as financially aware as we can to make sure it goes smoothly. And that's really where our firm tends to separate ourselves from some of the competitors out there. We're not just here to sell you investments. It's really more of how can we help make your plan better and make your retirement more efficient.
If you want the answers to some of these questions when it comes to your family, why not call Logan Sadler's office at 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Logan is the VP and Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial, serving you in Southern California, offices in Redlands and also Hemet. Again, that number is 888-823-PLAN. You can get a discovery meeting going, and by that I mean he discovers things about you. You discover things about him. You decide if you like to work together. Hey, that's cool. If you decide to walk away after that, that's fine, but you'll leave with a lot more knowledge than you had when you came in. You can come into the office and have this conversation, or you can do it via Zoom. Doesn't matter. 888-823-PLAN is the number to call to make it happen. Now, Logan Sadler works with 3 different generations of client families, and many of those clients have been around a long time, doing business with his firm for more than a quarter of a century. And it's kind of a one-stop shop for all things financial. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call. Logan Sadler at Regary Financial. My name is Ron Stutz, hanging out with Logan again this week, and we appreciate your being here, and we'll be right back.
Don't you want to see sharp and not be flat in retirement? This is the Financial Beat.
We're back now with more of the Financial Beat. Ladies and gentlemen, Logan Sadler is on the radio. Go tell everybody you know. The radio show is not the only way you can get lots of good information from Logan Sadler. First of all, there are podcasts you can check out and catch some shows that maybe you missed before, or maybe if you join us halfway through the show, you can listen later to the whole thing, that kind of thing. But also, Logan has a whole bunch of YouTube videos that are available. Logan, how do folks get hold of all that good information?
Yeah, you could head over to YouTube and type in The Financial Beat, and it'll take you right there to our landing page where we have videos uploaded weekly for you to check out. And a lot of them are viewer questions or different types of topics or conversations that I'm having with a lot of people just like yourself that are approaching retirement. A lot of questions surrounding Social Security, how to structure an income plan, how are taxes going to play a part in retirement, and also maybe some tax strategies that might work for you now to help start mitigating some of that tax risk throughout retirement. So just a lot of really good short and educational content for you to check out. Click subscribe, follow along, and also let us know if there's any other videos or questions you might want us to cover on the YouTube channel, and we'll be happy to get to those.
Logan's been doing these shows and putting together these YouTube videos for quite a while now, and one of these days I predict that Logan Sadler is going to get around to writing a book. So
Yeah, it's on the list.
have to be a little ambitious to do that because it's going to take a lot of time. But
Yep.
in our Getting to Know You segment today, Logan, what's the best book you've read in the last, say, 5 years or so?
I'm going to give you two. Okay, I'll give you one financial one because obviously I have to do that.
Yeah.
But also I'll give you one. I like sports. So any of you guys out there like sports or financials, the financial one is The Psychology of Money by I always say his last name wrong, so I apologize. It's Morgan Housel, I believe. And that is a great book that really tells you the differences in generations and how different people think about money. And it's a very great book. It's not giving you investment advice or anything like that, but it really helps you understand the concept of money and maybe how some of the different generations think about money and what makes them different. So I think it's a great book. Anybody out there that wants to check that out? And then on the sports side, I'm a big basketball fan, and I'm a big Laker fan. But however, I read Larry Bird's book, Drive, The Story of My Life, and it's an older book. But man, it's a great story of written by him of just how his upbringing was, his career was, and it's just a very insightful book of how determined of a man he was and kind of the struggles that he went through and how he's a lot more like maybe the average person than a lot of people thought.
Yeah. I watched a video recently, just kind of ran into it by accident. Larry Bird was, his team, the Celtics, were in the last game of a playoff series and getting ready to go to the championship game against the Lakers, I think. And he said, "I'm saving my right hand for the Lakers. I'm gonna play this game with my left hand." And it was incredible. The guy scored like 40 points using only his left hand.
I tell you what, he's one of those ones. I mean, a lot of people talk about Kobe and Michael Jordan as far as the mentalities. And, you have to throw Larry Bird in there, too, because some of his mentality was just like, I'm this much better than you, and I'm going to show you in different ways, right? It was amazing. It was awesome. And that book is great where it just kind of tells you a little bit more of a deeper dive on him. But, yeah he's one of the best.
Well, I'm not only a sports fan, but a music fan as well. And one of the best books I've read in a long time, a couple of years ago, I guess, a book called Life by Keith Richards at the Rolling Stones.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll have to check that out.
Really incredibly entertaining. I don't know how in the world that guy is still living, but he's going to outlive all of us. We need to start thinking about the kind of world we're going to leave for Keith Richards to live in.
I know. He'll outlive everybody. Isn't that amazing? There'll come a point where people aren't even going to know who that is anymore. He'd been alive so long.
Yeah, it's amazing. Hey, let's talk about cutting corners, which a lot of people try to do. Because maybe they're lazy or maybe they want to make up for lost time or whatever. But let's look at the ways that some people try to cut corners in their retirement planning. And number one on the list here, and a lot of people are guilty of this, taking too much risk to try and make up for not saving enough in earlier years. And that can be kind of dangerous sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean that's very similar, and I hate using some of these terms, but it is very similar. Then you're at the casino, right? I'm painting a picture for you. We're at the casino. It's a Saturday night. You're not much of a gambler, right? But you're there. You go down $1,000, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a bad day, right? I mean, most of us that don't gamble, if you lose $1,000, it's a lot of money if you don't really gamble, right? And guess what? I got an idea of how to make it back, right? Yeah. And you're going to go maybe bet a little bit even heavier than you did and put it all on black or all on red and hope that you make more to get not only your $1,000 back, but maybe much more in interest, right? And I always say, well, if it was that easy, why didn't we just do that in the first place, right? And so I think that's a lot like investing as you get closer to retirement. Some people, as they feel more and more behind, instead of saving more, they think they should just earn more. And the whole goal with earning more, that's great, right? If we can earn more, that's awesome. The problem is a lot of people aren't aware. Typically, the higher rate of return, you need typically a higher level of risk to take that on that return. The problem is that return sometimes isn't guaranteed, right? So that means the volatility could sometimes affect the plan. Just like putting that $1,000 down on red, it could be now down to $500. Now you're down $1,500, right? So I think it's important to understand staying focused on the overall goal. If you are behind, understanding how'd you get behind. Also, what can we do to get back to where we need to be, whether that's increased savings rates, maybe increased investment returns, but looking at what the risk would look like and not just kind of blindly going out there just hoping to swing for the fences.
Another way that people try and cut corners, and this is really dangerous to do this, is never getting your legal documents in place. It's so important to make sure all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and so many people just don't do that.
Yeah, it's amazing all the people I hear that have a lot of assets, some of them, and they'll say, I just go online and do this, or I heard you can print out a form and get a trust, or you could, and it's like, or they don't even start one, right? And that's one of the things we ask in our discovery meetings is obviously, do we have estate planning documents like a trust or a will set up? If so, who did them? And it's funny because that is one of the last things people typically do, because why? It's not really exciting, Ron, to talk about when you pass away, right? It's not really exciting to talk about if you're incapacitated and in a hospital. Yeah. So why would we want to set all that stuff up? Because it's not fun, right? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, just because it's not fun doesn't mean it's not extremely important. And so I think when it comes time to getting legal documents in play, not only is it an urgent thing for anybody, whether you're healthy or not healthy, but also it's one of those things that could really, really make a huge difference. And you talk to any estate planning attorney, hopefully any financial advisor, and maybe even any CPAs, and they'll tell you some of the horror stories they've seen some of their clients go through by just not having things set up correctly, or sometimes just being a little bit, a little bit complacent, not urgent enough to get that stuff done.
Yeah, it's so important to have those legal documents in place, but also a related topic in general is just not getting organized. And, Logan Sadler can help you get organized.
Yeah, it's funny. It's organization is one of those things that a lot of us are just born with or we're not. I'm a big believer in that one, right? I mean, I think it's like athleticism. A lot of people either just have it or you don't, right? And it's one of those things where we're lucky if we have it. If you don't, you find other ways to get by, right? And organization, I've seen it time and time again where, a client calls in on the radio, or they referred over from an existing client and they say, hey, will you help my friend Joe and Sue? Sue passed away and she handled the finances. Okay. And they'll come on in, and I call it the shoebox, right? They'll have a shoebox of paperwork, and it is sometimes 10 years old, right? The paperwork was dated in 2012, right? If I have a 401k here, an IRA here, half of the trust, maybe a couple of years ago, tax returns, and it is extremely unorganized and a lot of times very inaccurate, right? And I think it's so important to be as financially organized as you can. And that's why I always tell clients, some people want to have like 5 different financial advisors, right? And I go, that's not typically the best way to do things. Number one, from an investment standpoint, but also from an organization standpoint. You typically want to have one team that you work with, because one of our main goals is not only to get you on track financially and tactical as far as investments and income goals and all that stuff, but also organized. If something happens to you, I can't tell you how many times where a client's called in or a client's kids have called in and say, hey, listen, mom or dad passed away, and they told me to give you a call, right? And I'll go, okay, perfect. Sorry, condolences, all that stuff. And then they go, well, did they have this account? I go, no, that was closed out in 2016. They have this account, that account, and this account. Also, here's where their trust is at, right? So just being able to help with that organization aspect when you're alive, but also if something ever happens, having that there is very, very hard to put a price tag on.
Okay, we're talking about cutting corners, and so many people do. And when it comes to financial planning, getting to and through retirement, that's one thing you don't want to do. There are some people out there who just ignore details, the fine print maybe, about certain investments. That's another way that Logan Sadler can bring out his inner nerd and make sure you don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's certain things where clients go, well, no, my fees are low. Well, sometimes they're not, right? I'm diversified. Well, sometimes they're not, right? I've seen clients that have 3 or 4 different IRAs at a Vanguard or a Fidelity or a TD or a Schwab or wherever, and they think because they have them at different places, they're all diversified. Hate to break it to you, but in most cases, if you told each of those advisors, or if you selected the funds yourself and picked a moderate blend, you probably own all of the same funds that own all of the same positions, right? And so you're not necessarily as diversified as you might have thought. Low risk. I have a lot of clients that go, oh, I'm very low risk, right? And I go, okay, well, are you aware you have 70% of your money in the market? And they go, oh yeah. I go, well, are you aware that can go down based off statistics? That can go down X amount. And they go, oh no, if I went down that much, that would ruin my whole retirement plan, right? And it's like, well, yeah. So I think understanding the details about your investments and your retirement plan is very, very important. And that's where it's really dangerous to cut some of those corners, and making sure that is put into place correctly, but also understanding some of those small details can make a huge impact on the financial plan.
There are so many people out there, and you kind of mentioned this before. You were talking about medical issues, and I think you mentioned long-term care, but so many folks just kind of avoid altogether any discussion about long-term care. And statistics say that the great majority of us are going to need it at some point. It's something that we all need to think about and talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Ron, we could all, me and you've talked about on the show a bunch, right? But I mean, why do people not talk about their trust documents? It's the same people we don't want to talk about. This is the same reason we don't want to talk about long-term care, right? Because is that very fun? If me and you were having a beer together, right, we're talking about sports or the market or the economy or politics or whatever it is. Those are fun, exciting, get your blood boiling a little bit, right? You could argue, disagree, whatever you want to do. But talking about, hey, what type of policy do you have if you go into a nursing home facility? That's not normally the first thing that people talk about, right? And the reason why is, again, it's not a fun conversation to have, but it is an important one, right? And I think that's very important when your financial plan, not having a discussion about how you want your long-term care plan to go, but also putting together, pen to paper and actually taking action to have a long-term care plan. Like you said, the majority of us are going to spend some time in a facility at some point, and not having a plan could drastically affect the outcome of your retirement plan and your retirement savings. And I think that's where, looking at these 5 things, I believe there was 5, but looking at the 5 things we talked about, I think it's just super important when you're looking at an advisor. A lot of you out there might have one, or you're maybe interviewing some, or getting to the point where, you've built up a nice nest egg and you're getting close to retirement and maybe in need of an advisor. It's one of those things where so many people just go off of what investments do they offer, what's their rate of return, all that. And again, all that stuff can be important, but also understanding the small details of each of these things we talked about that can have a huge impact. I mean, a very, very, very deep impact in your retirement plan can be more important in some cases. So understanding, not cutting corners, and making sure that you actually have a rounded out retirement plan. And the problem with a lot of plans I see, Ron, people will come into our office, they'll call in for the discovery meeting, and they'll say, well, Logan, I already have a financial plan, right? And I go, well, you have an income calculator that was ran that shows you could take income. And they go, well, yeah, it's an income plan. And I go, well, what about if inflation goes up? Well, I didn't really think about that, right? What about if these investments don't perform to the return you ran? Well, I didn't really think about that, right? What happens if you go into a long-term care facility? Well, I didn't really think about that either, Logan. Well, what about taxes? What if tax rates go up and your income's going to go down? Yeah, that's a good point, right? So I think when you're looking at all of those aspects, having a full, comprehensive financial plan and having an advisor that is, has the repertoire in their arsenal to be able to tackle all of these things, and that does not only help 1 or 2 people do it, but help hundreds of people achieve this type of level of confidence in their plan. That's what our firm offers. And again, that's what you're offered at that discovery meeting, to come in and to see if we'd be a good fit to help make an impact in your retirement.
If you'd like to get in touch with Regary Financial and get connected, 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make that happen. That is 888-823-PLAN, your number to call for Logan Sadler, VP, Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. 2 convenient offices in Southern California, Hemet and Redlands. Wherever you are, call that number and make it happen. 888-823-PLAN. That is good for a discovery meeting, a getting to know you session with Logan, either via Zoom or some other form of technology, or maybe you might want to come into one of the convenient offices. It's not going to cost you anything at all, not going to obligate you to do anything either. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call for Logan Sadler at Regary Financial. We'll have more coming up on today's edition of the Financial Beat right after this.
Do you ever find yourself skipping through countless songs trying to find the perfect one? Yeah, we've been there too, and know it can be frustrating. Much like skipping through the countless advertisements from other financial advisors, it can seem like there's so much misinformation. But here on the Financial Beat, you can rest assured we're providing you with the best information possible. So don't push skip on this show, because we have some important information coming up.
We're back now with more of the Financial Beat, and the beat goes on, as they say. Logan Sadler is here, of course, and our main topic of conversation is getting you to and through retirement. And Logan is a person that you should arrange to have a conversation with if you are concerned about that. Maybe you're getting close to retirement age and thinking about all the bases that you need to have covered. Logan Sadler can help with that whole process. 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN, your number to call to get a conversation with Logan Sadler. We call it a discovery meeting. It is basically a get-together with Logan, either via Zoom or in person in one of the convenient offices, Hemet or Redlands, and just a conversation so you can get to know each other and decide if you'd like to move on from there. 888-823-PLAN. Logan Sadler can take a deep dive into your financial situation and give you some ideas on where you are and how you can get where you want to go in retirement. Once again, that number, 888-823-PLAN. 823-PLAN. I'm going to start with a fun fact of the week, or maybe not so fun fact, depending on how you look at it. But I remember taking part in this Adopt a Highway program at one point, where we were on the side of the road picking up cigarette butts off the side of the road.
Lovely.
And I read this week that cigarette butts are the most littered man-made items in the world, with an estimated 4 trillion of them littered each year. And so many people just throw them out of the car window, you know?
You know, it's funny because a lot of these we always kind of question, right? But this is one I 1,000% would. I don't know if it's exactly 4 trillion, but I do know it's a lot because everywhere you go, right? I mean, nice hotel, any type of a casino or the beach or the river or anywhere you go, you see cigarette butts everywhere, right? I mean, it's just, and it's funny because you would think less people smoke nowadays maybe than back then. I'm not sure on the statistics on that, but I feel like you just see a ton of cigarette butts everywhere.
Yeah, I just can't believe that people are so incredibly inconsiderate. Not only is it just nasty, I mean, throwing these things out, but
I agree.
But, you know, they throw them out of the window of the car with the darn thing still lit. You know, I mean, there should be a lot more fires on the side of the road than there are.
Yeah, I agree with that. With 4 trillion, I mean, even if a tenth of those caught fire, that'd be a lot of fires, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about something a little bit more pleasant today. Logan, one of my favorite parts of the show every week is where you get a chance to answer some specific questions from some of our listeners. And today we have some good ones. First one is from Mitch in Oakland. And Mitch says, our home is worth about $750,000. We currently owe about $200,000 on it. We'll be selling it soon and downsizing to a smaller home for retirement. I'd always assumed that we have a smaller mortgage on the new house, but since rates are high, should I reconsider that? We'll be in a position to pay for it once we sell the house we're in now.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mitch. You know, there's a lot to unpack there, but it is one of those weird situations for a lot of people that's hard to comprehend, right? Because you probably had that $750,000 house that you owed $200 on, and you know, basically you probably had a 2, 3, 4% mortgage on it, right? And so now when you go to sell that house, you take your equity and you'll probably put some down on a house that's probably going to be, you know, double your payment, right, for a smaller house or close to. And I think it's something that does put a kink in some people's plans. However, there's a few things to look at it, and I would really, number one, make sure it's a place you want to go and you want to move to downsize. Making sure it's the right time to downsize. Maybe it's not too soon, or you don't want to wait till it's too late. But then understanding the area that you're moving to, is that somewhere you're going to be long term? The nice part about typically buying, if you find something that's perfect and an ideal fit for you to downsize, whether it's a retirement community or maybe just a smaller home, I think it's something where, you know, it's nice to where you could put some down on the house and maybe give you a smaller mortgage, and then you could always refi later if rates come down or when they come down. But I would want to talk further kind of more about what we're trying to spend, what the budget's going to be, and also what the other income sources will have throughout the retirement and how far away we are from retirement and things like that. But there's a few different obstacles you could run through there to help work that math out. The nice part now is it's a tricky time for real estate, right? Because rates are high. However, it's not very competitive when you're buying, right? There's not people that are paying $50,000 over asking price like they were last year or year before. So it is a little bit easier of a time to buy. However, your interest rate, it does affect the mortgage amount. However, if rates do come down, you could refi that. Again, that might be next year, it might be 5 years. That's the question nobody knows. So we got to kind of go over the budget as far as the other assets and income sources to make sure it makes sense now to do it.
All right, got another question here from Stephanie, and Stephanie is Moreno Valley. Stephanie says, are fees and commissions the same thing in the financial world, or fees are fees and commissions different? Logan, can you explain that?
Yeah, great spot. So I would say to the client, they might be the same, but they are different, right? So typically a fee is paid by the client. So let's say you have $1 million in a retirement account that someone's managing, and they're charging you a 1% fee. That 1% fee is going to come out of that account value for $10,000 a year, or by quarterly, or however they bill. So you're paying the fees out of pocket. Or if they have a financial planning fee of, let's say, $2,000 to do a financial plan, you're paying the fee out of pocket. Now, a lot of people like fees over commissions because typically fees, the whole goal of the fee-based advisor is that they're not getting any type of incentives to push you one way or the other. So some clients would rather pay the fees and feel more comfortable that route. Commissions are typically if you buy an insurance product like an annuity or a universal life policy or something like that, or even some of the older mutual funds and stuff like that might have had a commission on those. Those typically don't come out of your pocket. Typically they're paid by an insurance company, so the advisor might get like a 5% commission one time or whatnot, right? Or they might have a small residual on it or whatever. But typically, those don't come out of your pocket. Those are paid by the other types of institutions. There is some cases where you might pay the commissions on the brokerage side, but it really depends. Now, there is a big difference on which one's better or worse, and it really depends on what you're using that product for. A lot of talk this last few years, Ron, has been, I'm a fee-based advisor, or I only charge up assets under management, or I only charge commissions, or one's better than the other. To me, it really depends on what you're looking for out of the advisor and what you're wanting. And typically, most people are wanting that fiduciary that are there to understand and really act under the capacity to make sure they're putting the client's needs first, which typically does fall more under that fee-based advisor. But even though sometimes insurance products and things like that might be a recommendation, so it's important for the advisor to disclose those and really go over that with the client. And that's what we spend a lot of time with our clients on, is going over, what the costs are, how we get paid, and all that stuff is super important to understand as the client, because again, it's important to be transparent on both sides of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more question today, Logan, here on the Financial Beat, and it's from Brad in Loma Linda. Brad says, I have an HSA plan available through my new job. I've never had one before. Is it worth putting money into it?
Yeah, great question. I don't think we've had this one before, so that's a good one. Yeah, HSA plans are typically some people call them like the holy grail of investments, right? Mm-hmm. And they can have a lot of benefits to them, especially for health coverage costs. They could be used, sometimes for a tax-free purpose, so they can have a lot of benefits to them. I would definitely look at your overall financial situation, look at your retirement accounts, your savings, prioritize those first. But to add on to a third leg, yes, HSAs can be very important to a financial plan, especially down the road when we're looking at healthcare costs and things like that. HSAs could be a great way to cover some of our medical expenses and pretty tax favorable and sometimes tax free. So yes, I would definitely say if you have further questions on the HSA, I could dive into it, but I typically would like to prioritize savings, current savings, right? Retirement savings, and then the HSA plan would be the third option. But it is one of those options that could be very beneficial. And we've had a lot of clients that we've really, really encouraged to go ahead and utilize those in the retirement plan because they can make a big impact.
Logan, I know you get lots of questions all the time, and we answer some of them on this show. Are there other ways that people can get in touch with you to ask a question? Should they just call the number that we give out so many times?
Yeah, you can give us a call on that number. Like I said, the 888-823-PLAN number is one you can reach us on. Some of you out there, if you want to go right to the calendar, on my calendar and book it, you can go right to the financialbeatwebsite.com, and it'll basically pull you right there to my calendar. And really what that discovery meeting is all about is a lot of you out there that are approaching retirement or maybe just started, and you're really out there, and there's a lot of confusing things getting thrown at you, a lot of uncertain times, but you're also looking for somebody to help you navigate this piece of the storm that we're probably going through or maybe just started. And I think that's a lot of what our specialty really lies in, is helping people that are approaching retirement really navigate some of these tricky obstacles that are going to be thrown your way, not only now, but also throughout your retirement. That's what we always use, that phrase that Ron uses all the time, is to and through retirement. A lot of advisors or a lot of people don't need much help during their accumulation phase. When they're savings and putting money in their retirement accounts, it can be rather easy, right? You set a percentage and you put money away. But as you get closer and closer to retirement, you might have $200,000 or $1 million or $3 million, And now, how do we manage that to create income? How do we look at tax efficiency? How is our legacy going to play into this? And also, is that enough to retire on, or do we need more or less, right? And really putting together a lot of those intricate parts in the plan is what Gary Financial is all about. So hopefully, those of you out there will either go schedule on the calendar or give us a call. And I'd love to sit down at that discovery meeting. It doesn't cost anything to really just sit down, see if we're a good fit, and again, see if our firm can bring some value to your retirement.
And the number to call for Gary Financial is 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Just if you're calling during the show today, just call, leave a message with your name and phone number. You'll get a call back first part of the week from the outstanding team at Gary Financial, and then you can set a time to have your conversation with Logan. Cost-free, obligation-free. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call for a discovery meeting. Logan Sadler would love the opportunity to sit down and talk with you, and I think you'll enjoy it. You'll also learn a lot. 888-823-PLAN. Logan, we've come to the end of another show, and I just want to say it's been fun, and I'm already looking forward to next week's program.
Yeah, I tell you what, it is my favorite day of the week to hop on here for an hour or so and talk retirement education, and obviously talking with you, Ron, and also a lot of our listeners out there. I appreciate all the positive feedback we've been getting, and all the client and viewer questions we always appreciate. Keeps the show fun and exciting, and we appreciate the support, and we're going to be back here again next week.
And I know that, with Halloween coming up, it's a good way to eat a whole lot of candy, so just be careful.
I'm going to do it.
Everybody take care, and we'll see you again next week.
Gary Financial and Insurance Services, Inc. and BD Financial Group, Inc. are separate and independent entities. The information provided in this presentation is presented for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, tax, or legal advice, nor does it constitute an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any securities.